New polling showing Donald Trump holding a lead still on the issue of who you trust to handle the economy. And both candidates this week speaking to that issue on the campaign trail on back-to-back days, rounding out their economic policy proposals. I guess it's no mystery why.
Certainly. And so tomorrow at his rally in Savannah, Georgia, he's expected to talk about his tax code policies and U.S. manufacturing. So that's something that we've been tracking very closely here at Bloomberg. And in the last couple of weeks, we've seen him sort of promote a variety of interesting ideas. You know, no tax on overtime wages, no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security benefits, all of these things that, you know, might have confounded a voter thinking about what Donald Trump's tax policy would have been just a couple of months ago. But overall, the message that he's sending is that he's trying to lower the cost of living for everyday Americans.
Well, and of course, in some ways, his tax policy is also tied to manufacturing policies. He's floating a lower corporate tax rate specifically for companies that make their goods in the U.S. Would be looking at a tax rate of 15%. Of course, as he's making these pitches specifically in swing states, it is worth noting he was in Pennsylvania today. Georgia will he be tomorrow. According to the latest New York Times Siena poll, he is up by 4 points. That is within the margin of error. Trump 49, Harris 45. In the Sun Belt, perhaps these are encouraging figures for the Trump campaign?
Possibly, but one thing that I would caution is that it seems like these numbers have been going back and forth quite a bit, almost ping-ponging between the two candidates, one up one day, one up the next day. And of course, you know, there's still so much time between now and November 5th. So what we see right now might not necessarily apply to next week.
Well, and in 1 week, a week from tomorrow, we'll be looking at the next debate. Vice presidential candidates both are preparing now. We understand Tom Emmer is acting in this case as Tim Walz when J.D. Vance is sparring. Tim Walz reportedly using Pete Buttigieg in place of J.D. Vance. How important is this? We've been debating whether there'll be a second presidential debate. Do people care about the running mates in this campaign?
I do think that in a sense it is important because a lot of Americans don't actually know who Senator J.D. Vance is or Governor Walz is. So this is really their chance to introduce themselves to the national stage. And the fact that we might not have another presidential debate, it's really their message is the final thing that we'll hear from these campaigns. And to go to your earlier point about Vance's debate prep, sources have been telling me that he really ratcheted it up in the last week. You know, of course, he isn't taking it too seriously, but he does still care about it and is putting more effort into it than he would a normal public appearance.
Sure.
All right, Bloomberg's Stephanie Lai with a brief rest period in Washington before she heads back out onto the trail. Thank you so much. Now in the Middle East, Israel said a campaign of airstrikes today hit 1,300 Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, where health officials said 356 people were killed. John Kirby, White House National Security Communications Advisor, had this to say about the escalating tensions on Fox yesterday.
We don't believe that escalating this conflict militarily is the best way to get those families back to their kibbutzes, back to their homes and to their lives. We still believe that there is time and space for diplomacy to work here. Now, again, we're not Pollyannish. We're watching the tensions escalate here over the last few days.
The Pentagon now says the U.S. is sending a, quote, small number of additional military personnel to the region. Joining us now for more is Bloomberg's Dan Flatley, who covers national security for us from here in Washington. So obviously we are still seeing, frankly, the trading, the exchanging of fire between Israel and Hezbollah with no sign that it's going to let up anytime soon as the UN General Assembly gets underway. How concerning a moment is this for the U.S. administration and for the others that will be gathered in New York?
Well, I think it's certainly going to be top of mind. I mean, last year, really, the focus was on President Zelensky and Ukraine and what's going on there with regard to the Russian invasion. This year, it's hard to ignore what's happening in the Middle East, obviously, because we see these images in real time. And so I think that will be top of mind, certainly for the diplomats who are in New York for the UN General Assembly, but also for folks here in the Biden administration in Washington. As you heard Admiral Kirby there talking about not wanting to see escalation. You know, Israel is a very close ally of the United States, and the United States provides Israel with a lot of munitions and other support. But, you know, there's only so much influence that the U.S. can exert if Israel feels like, you know, they need to take these steps in order to secure that northern part of their country and attack southern Lebanon. So it's going to be very interesting to see how all that plays out. I think that if Prime Minister Netanyahu makes it to New York this week, to hear what he has to say about this entire operation will be very interesting, and to see how the administration reacts.
We keep hearing concerns about a war between Israel and Hezbollah. But as you reminded us earlier, it was a week ago today, pagers were blowing up in Lebanon. The day after, walkie-talkies, solar installations, then crossfire for days across the border between the two. What would we call this? And should we start thinking about this as the beginning of a new war?
Well, it's hard to say exactly when a conflict turns into a war. I mean, typically there's no, line of embarkation where it automatically happens. These things tend to boil until they boil over. I think that what we're seeing here, certainly from the Israeli perspective, they have not talked about boots on the ground. So they are not considering this a war. They're considering this a quote-unquote air campaign. That doesn't really matter if you're on the receiving end of a bomb.
Fair enough.
But at the same time, I think the intent is to limit it to an operation that is going to basically push Hezbollah back north enough in Lebanon for Israeli citizens to sort of start moving back into that northern part of their country. Whether that's successful or not at the end of the day, or if it leads to additional escalation, in part depends, I think, a little bit on what some of the diplomats are able to work out on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly this week in New York.
Well, and of course, the other thing diplomats will likely be pushing for is a ceasefire with Hamas as they keep one eye on the conflict with Hezbollah. Is there a feeling, though, that is just getting farther and farther from being realized?
I think definitely it's getting farther and farther away. It's sort of receding into the background. Whether President Biden can get that done by the end of his administration is an open question. I certainly think that is the intent of the administration, to keep pushing on that. But as we see from Israel's perspective, they feel that they have a war or a conflict or whatever you want to call it on two fronts, and they are now shifting their focus to the north. What the ultimate strategic goal with all of that is sort of remains to be seen, but it certainly doesn't help a ceasefire.